Welcome everybody. My name is Niklas Huschenmild and I'm looking forward to show you the openings of Anatoly Karpov. So there are a total of 4 videos in this section. In the first 2 videos I'm going to show you Karpov's white repertoire, and then in the next 2 videos I'm going to discuss his black repertoire. So in this video I will show you his starting moves 1e4 and 1c4, and in the next one we will see 1d4, which was the move he played the most. So I would say let's begin with 1c4. Now, of course, he had several different responses to this move. Let's have a look at c5. Now, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3, e6, and he liked to put his bishop on g2. b6, bishop g2, and this position he had quite a lot actually. Castles, a6, and now d4. C takes d4, queen takes d4. And this is the kind of position that Karpov liked to play. Have a little bit of space advantage, a little bit of pressure, and no risk whatsoever. Position he really enjoyed playing. And what we'll see throughout all the videos pretty much, that Karpov always went for positions which suited his style. So, as I will hopefully make clear, is that Karpov was really aiming for positions with little risk, small advantage, maybe small edge, and just playable position where he can maybe slowly outplay his opponent. So let's see a different line. Knight f6, then knight f3, and of course oftentimes he just transposed here. I don't have to tell you this by playing d4 at this moment, for example, but we'll see this in the next video. For now, let's have a look at knight c3, b6, and once again he goes for g3 and goes for this bishop g2 fianchetto. And again, he's just aiming for the same setup, d4. So something he usually liked to do. Completely different variation we have after 1e5, the English variation. Now, knight c3, knight f6, knight f3, knight c6, and now g3. Bishop b4, bishop g2, castles, castles, e4, it's a very topical line, knight e1, bishop takes c3, and now d takes c3. And once again, that was kind of position Karpov enjoyed playing because it's rather a closed position, not too much going on, it's just a lot of maneuvering and shuffling your pieces around. And that's exactly where Karpov had one of his big strengths. So I can see why he decided to go for this variation a few times. Alright, I would say let's now move to 1e4. And what's interesting about this move is that Karpov only played it really a lot till 1990. And then suddenly he decided to play 1d4 much more often. So here I want to show you how he played it against a variety of openings. So let's start with d6, the perk. d4, knight f6, knight c3, and he played not the most ambitious line. He just developed his pieces on natural squares. Knight f3, bishop g7, bishop e2, castles, castles, bishop e3, knight c6, bishop e3, e5, queen d2, And actually this setup here with the bishops in e3 and e2 and the queen on d2 and maybe the rook coming to d1, we'll see this again later. It's a theme I noticed among Karpov's setups in the various openings, that he liked to set up his pieces this way. And again, we have slightly better position for white. Not too much happening though. It's not like he wants to overrun his opponent right out of the opening. That's not the case. He just wants to have a playable position where he maybe has a little bit of an advantage, just like I said before. And then from there, just play chess and counting on his own strength of being a better player than his opponent. That much about the perk. Let's see another line, e6, the French. Also played a few times against him, of course. d4, d5, knight d2. Of course he would go for knight d2 mostly, because it leads again to these kind of positions that I already described. Slight edge, not too much risk. For example, c5, e takes d5, e takes d5, knight g3, knight c6, bishop b5, bishop d6, castles. We have this structure where black has an isolated pawn on d5, and like I said, white has a little bit of pressure, he has a little bit of something. It's not much, but he can play, he can try. And well, if the game ends in a draw, that's fine too, but at least Karpov doesn't have a lot of risks, and I think he really liked this. And this way was really different from, let's say, Kasparov, of course. Before we talk about the main openings at this point, e5 and c5, let's have one quick look at c6, the Caro-Kann variation, which was Karpov's own main weapon as a black player, as we'll see later in the videos. So c6, now d4, d5, and here he also went mostly for knight d2. Don't ask me why, really, it doesn't make a difference that much between knight c3 and knight d2. If maybe black's plays something else, then d takes e4, it could make a difference, but in any case, black usually takes on e4 here. And I found it interesting how he plays against his own line, which is knight d7. He liked to play knight f3, bishop c4, and then knight gf6, knight g5. But this also doesn't seem like it leads to a huge advantage for white, obviously. So, but it was a position he liked to play with both colors, I guess. Knight b6, bishop b3 was the game. Karpov against Petrosian, another ex-world champion. So let's return at this point to, to this position. Let's have a quick look at bishop f5, which is the main move at this point, not knight d7. And here Karpov followed the main variation with h4, h6, knight f3, knight d7, h5, bishop h7, bishop d3, and once again we have this kind of position, right, where white has a little bit of an edge, he has a space advantage, better developed, little bit of something, not too much, and he can try. And that was the game, Karpov against Miles, Amsterdam, 1985. And now let's have a look at the main moves here, e5 and c5. Let's start with e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and you're probably not surprised. Bishop b5 was his main choice to Ray Lopez, of course, because this leads exactly to kind of positions I was already talking about, where white is maneuvering and it's a lot about planning, ideas, and putting your pieces on the right squares, and this is where Karpov was an expert in. So, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castles, and now he had a few games, not only a few, a lot actually, in the open Ruy Lopez with knight takes e4. Now d4, b5, bishop b3, d5, d takes e5, bishop e6, and now he had a lot of games in his match against Viktor Korchnoi. And he played c3 as well as knight bd2. And he had one interesting idea here after knight bd2, knight c5, c3, d4. Main move is bishop takes e6, which is also kind of a natural move, just taking off the bishops. And he had also quite a few games here against Korchnoi and was quite successful. But he came across another move, really interesting idea, knight g5, putting the knight on crease. But if black takes, funnily enough, after queen f3, he doesn't have a way to defend this knight on c6 in a sensible manner. So this actually is okay for white. Actually, if I remember correctly, black should take here now castles, but this looks really dangerous. So I'm not surprised that Korchnoi didn't go for this, and instead he took on c3, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, he took on c3 after knight g5. D takes c3. Knight takes e6, but this leads to a better endgame now for white. Queen d3, knight f3, and this is quite a pleasant endgame for white, even though Karpov wasn't able to convert, but definitely with his opening preparation here, he gained an edge in this game against Korchnoi. Now let's have a look at the other Spanish lines after castles. Bishop e7, rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, castles, h3. And now, back in the day, knight b8 was a popular choice, the Breyer variation. Still a popular choice nowadays. And here, d4, knight bd7, knight bd2, bishop b7, bishop c2, c5, and here Karpov's, this is still a position which has been played hundreds, thousands of times, mainline position. Here Karpov's choice was to play d5, oftentimes just deciding to close the center and go from there. And again, it fits with his style because in close positions, obviously there's much more maneuvering and not too much concrete action going on. And this is exactly what Karpov was really good at, as I already emphasized. So it makes sense. And the game Karpov against Kligerich, continuing with knight e8, knight f1, g6, bishop h6, knight g7, knight e3, and just making slow progress. White can play on the king side, he can play on the queen side. Complicated, complex position, but this is where Karpov felt at home. Now, let's have a look at the Sicilian. So e4, c5. Knight f3, d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3. And let's have a look how he played against the Najdorf. And you might not be surprised to find out that he mostly opted for the positional line, bishop e2 and short castle. Now we can distinguish between e6 and e5. Let's have a look at e6. Now f4, queen c7, and a4. Also again, setup Karpov liked to do. He liked to play a4 and restrict black from playing b5 himself. Bishop e7, castles, castles, bishop e3, knight c6, bishop f3, and that was the game Karpov against Adianto in Jakarta in 1997. Just a normal position, more or less. White has slight space advantage, and he can go from there. And after e5, Karpov played similarly. Again, he decided to play with a4 in most cases. So, for example, here, after queen d2, knight bd7, now a4 again, restricting the black options on the queen side. Rook c8, rook fd1 was the game Karpov against Nunn in Amsterdam 1985. And even though it's a Sicilian, still Karpov is directing the game in ways that fit his playing style. We have seen it again and again. You don't see him castling queenside, really. Not often, of course he did it as well, but more to his style and what he liked to play, the positions, this is what he liked. So, we reached the end of this video. I hope you got a good understanding of Karpov's choices after one e4 and one c4. And in the next video, I will show you Karpov's one d4 with the white pieces. See you then.